Alright, today I've got a goofy story for you that I dearly love. It's one of my almost just completely unread stories. Very few people have bothered to read this story. What little feedback I've gotten has been mostly positive. It's like you either get it or you don't. You either appreciate this story or you don't. But lucky for you, it's really short. So it won't take long for you to make up your mind. If you love this story as much as I do, it's silly. It is not dandy smoldy pants silly. I'm proud of this one. I'm proud of this story. And so, sit back, relax, multitask, do what you're gonna do, and let me tell you a story. This one is called "And Then an Elephant Shot Out of His Chest." "Welcome to Creative Writing 106, said the professor as he entered the classroom. "I am Professor Frosty Butterpillow Protagonistic Showerhead Flowerpot Dog-Eating Frying Pan Mass Glorious. But I insist that you all call me Professor Frosty Butterpillow Protagonistic Showerhead Flowerpot Dog-Eating Frying Pan Mass Glorious Condensed for short, as a sign of familiarity throughout the entire duration of this course." The students, who didn't know whether to laugh out loud or run screaming to the registrar to drop the absurd professor's class, simply stared wide-eyed as the strange-looking man made his way to the front of the room. He had an elegant stride with long, exceedingly skinny slacks, and he wore a navy blue sports coat over his decidedly pear-shaped body. His head was both entirely bald and graced with a full shock of shining red hair, and it always had been. His arms and legs were so thin that anyone who observed them was forced to wonder if there was even room enough for bones beneath the skin of them. His legs resembled chopsticks that were stuck into the bottom of his basketball-esque belly, and they were held to the floor by his extraordinarily tiny feet and, remarkably, even tinier shiny black shoes. The professor, as we shall refer to him henceforth, for the sake of the conservation of both paper and of ink, looked over his mouth-breathing new students and scoffed without reason or purpose. He addressed them with an air of undeniable wisdom, in spite of his peculiar manifestation. Today's lesson is the first and most important lesson in creative writing. Before we can go any further in the course, we must establish the rules. Can anyone tell me the rules of creative writing offhand, without the benefit of having been correctly educated by my vast doctoral knowledge and unequivocal experience? A young man raised his hand, quite certain of himself. "Yes, you there, Mr.
Billy, sir."
"Yes, Billy. Please do enlighten us on the rules of creative writing."
"Well, Professor Penny Windsor Procomp Sognathus,
If you're going to mangle my name, Billy, please refrain from using it."
"Gladly, Professor. Anyway, there are rules like grammar, punctuation, never start a sentence with the word and have a good vocabulary. Keep your facts straight, and never rip anybody else off."
"Well, Billy, it seems you're an idiot and something of a tit," spake the professor haughtily. "You see, the only hard and fast rule of creativity in writing is that there is no hard and fast rule for writing creatively. There are no rules for creative writing. Artistry is nothing at all, if not the greatest scofflaw of all vocations. No rules, none. What an incredible tit you are."
You can't call me that, sir." I'll complain to the dean.
Yes, Billy, I can. I can call you whatever I like, because there are no rules to creative writing, and this class is called creative writing, and therefore, there are no rules to this class. Now, listen closely as I debunk your tittly notions of the rules. What was the first one again? Billy shrugged.
I don't know.
A young lady who had been taking feverish notes shouted out, "Grammar!" "Ain't no thing," answered the professor. "Next." The girl blurted out, "Punctuation! You mean like ending all questions with a question mark, don't you? Or perhaps you mean never-ending sentences of narration with an exclamation mark." He considered that, astonished. These are rules for writing in general, yes, but the rules of writing were made to be broken, especially when we are poised to confront them artistically. We are not here to write business letters or technical manuals. We are here to write thoughtful, perhaps even dreamlike essays, short fiction, even 10,000-page novels, and I would never begin a sentence with "and" in this class, unless I wanted to, or saw fit, for some reason, or no reason at all, to do so. This is true. As for continuity, he scratched his head, running his fingers determinedly through his wispy gray hair, until the itch had passed. I should think that makes perfect sense, but is it a rule? Hardly. There might be a crisis on infinite Earths. The multiverse could collide with itself. The story may require an incongruous fact, or 3,000 incongruous facts, before it even begins to make sense. Billy raised his hand again, and the professor pointed to him encouragingly.
I have to ask, didn't your hair used to be red?
What? Asked the professor. Of course not. My hair has always been gray.
Then why do I remember you walking in here with red hair? And completely bald?
Billy shook his head.
I'm so confused. This class sucks.
Well, Billy, my boy, it's because you're a tit. That, or there's some epic temporal disturbance in this room. Time travel! That's it! The professor laughed out loud with sheer delight. In creative writing, we don't even have to move through time chronologically. It's a wonder, really. A limitless wonder, where all things are things. And even nothings are things. And all things and nothings alike that could be done, can be done. Do you see what I mean? No rules at all, my young friend. No rules of any kind.
Well, speaking of speaking, Billy pressed on, what about vocabulary? Doesn't one need to have a vast vocabulary before one can even begin to write?
No, said the professor.
Oh,
said Billy. Forgive my invidious statement, Sir Tit, but I dare say at times flaunting one's myriad collection of little-known words may even hinder the comprehension of one's work. But before you remonstrate, if indeed a healthy dash of elevated loquaciousness is what your work requires, then by all means don't hold back. And may I point out that while you yourself have an obtuse yet salubrious countenance, your friend there taking feverish notes looks inexorably scorbutic.
Huh?
Billy asked. Precisely, Billy. Write what you can. Then write what you will. When writing creatively, use only the words that you really like best. Use them to do whatever you like. Anything can happen. Anything at all. You could even write an elephant shooting out of your chest.
But that's absurd!
And so it is. There's no rule against absurdity, just as there's no rule against sensibility. Haven't I made it clear that the only true law is not? The professor pulled his elegant, long, blonde locks behind him, tying them into a tail.
Your hair's blonde now,
noted Billy with confused surprise. As ever it's been, proclaimed the professor. Billy blinked twice, then decided in pretense not to be troubled. He asked his next question.
But what about all of the things that have already been done? Isn't there a rule against stealing ideas? A copyright is the only real inhibitor here, the professor solemnly professed. But that's only a law, not nearly a rule. By all means, write down your visions of Harry Potter versus the Vampire Lestat. Write a screenplay of your dreams for Star Wars Episode 112. Share them with your mom and all of your friends. Just don't publish them, and don't submit them for sale. I'm not here to teach you about publishing, though, just writing. And writing freely, without inhibitions, like a naked baby flying through a bakery. Now, as for stealing ideas, it's all been done before, one way or another. Make your own remix. Add your own spin. Why call it stealing when you can mark it homage? But surely there are things you simply can't do, insisted young Billy. What about common sense and decency? What about taste? What about formula and the staples of genre? Billy, you vex me. Now let me spell it out. Taste and decency are really singular perspectives. Why must we all pretend to share a common definition of these things simply because we've been told that we should? Will the world really fall apart if we break with convention? Will society crumble? Will the oceans boil if we walk backwards into a room and sit at the desk on our hands and our heads? I tell you, in writing creatively, there is absolutely nothing we can't do. For example, the professor suddenly stripped off his clothes and stood stark naked before the class. He turned, running a hand over his stringy black hair, and went to the board, where he wrote an elaborate equation that ended with equals n. He stood back and looked at his handiwork, oblivious to the screeches and gasps from the class now facing his unencumbered posterior. By golly, my young tit, that's it! Time travel indeed! The professor launched himself into the air and flew with a wicked smile, his aged yet childlike genitals offending many of the students who beheld them, as he flew through the air to the other side of the room, where he descended merrily into a giant bowl full of dough, and traveled back in time, to a time before his birth. The students sat stunned, staring at the bowl and waiting for his return. When after a time it was clear that he was not coming back any time soon, Billy asked the girl, who'd been taking feverish notes, "Do you think the class is over? What should we do? Do you think we'll lose our grade if we get up and leave? If he comes back at all?" The girl shrugged, then put her feverish head down on her desk, and died silently, unmourned by anyone, and forgotten by everyone. Billy turned to his other classmates. "Should we leave? I didn't learn a thing in this class. I say we go to the dean." And then an elephant shot out of his chest. The students all screamed and ran from the room, as the elephant trumpeted and began writing chocolate love sonnets on the board with its trunk. As they fled the room, they all knew they were safe, because the class, creative writing, had at last been dismissed. They all now knew that anything could happen in creative writing, and it probably would. An elephant had actually shot out of Billy's scrawny little chest, and he had remained alive and perfectly unharmed to tell the tale to any who might acquiesce to hear it. There were indeed no rules in creative writing, and the students of the professor had learned the lesson well. All except for Billy, that is. When it is revealed that the rules are illusory, some people break free, and others just sit. Billy was simply too much of a tit. And there you have, and then an elephant shot out of his chest, aka my master class in creative writing. One of my favorite 1-star reviews on Amazon is for this story. I don't have very many,
Like, I always look at 1-star reviews as a mark of success. You know, it means people who don't know you and don't like you are reading your stuff. But the 1-star review on this, I think I have a couple of really good reviews on Amazon for this story. But the one bad review it's great. Because like I love 1-star reviews that criticize something for being what I intended it to be. Like, it's too this, it's too that. And I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted it to be. This one it's too creative. Which I love. I love that review. I think it's too much, it's too creative and there's too much vocabulary. I think those were the words. Very much appreciated. So if you really enjoyed that story and would like to share it with others or read it with your own eyes, with your own voice in your head and leave me out of it, there's a Kindle ebook on Amazon.com. There is a paperback on my website, glennslade-clark-jr.com, if you want something to hold in your hand. There is also on my website a free PDF edition if you don't want to read it and don't mind not having it in a standard. I mean, if you don't want to pay for it, not read it. If you don't want to pay for it and you don't mind it not being in a standard ebook format, you can read it for free however many times you want on my website. Next time I did creepy the last 2 episodes. I did silly this episode. Next episode, we're going to combine the 2 for a creepy, silly story called Dario Young and the GPS from Hell. Pearl Clutchers beware. There are a lot of swears in that one. Meanwhile, if you like this video, if you like my stories, if you like any of the other stuff that I do on this channel, please subscribe, click like below, and I'll see you next time.